Welcome back to the ChessGoals YouTube channel. I got my Wanna Play Chess shirt on, and today we're going to go over a game from VIP member John. If you're interested in joining the ChessGoals channel, if you want to be a VIP member, check out the links in the description below. So in this game, John is playing the black pieces, and his opponent starts with one knight to f3. This is called the ready opening, and I like what John does here. John goes for a big center. So this is kind of switching from a ready now to a Colle system. And this can sometimes lead to the Zucker-Tort variation, but in this specific game, it stays in kind of the Colle territory. And watch what John does here. Just develops naturally, plays c5. This is the first move that I really like. And after c3, John has grabbed more space than white, right? So it's almost like John is playing the white pieces. He has pawns on d5 and c5. So that's 2 pawns on the 5th rank. White only has 1 pawn on the 4th rank. So there's already a space advantage here for black. So that's positive takeaway number 1. Now we see c takes d4 by John. This is a move that I think could be a nice improvement takeaway. And this is something that I talk about quite a bit if you've watched my other videos. We have pawn tension here between c5 and d4, right? These pawns are threatening to capture each other. Let's talk about which pawn has the advantage in terms of this pawn tension. The pawn on d4 has 2 options. It can either sit still and do nothing, or it can capture. And that pawn does not want to capture c5 because then white has no pawns on the 4th rank, and black will be able to simply capture back with the bishop, also a developing move. So 2 options for this pawn. One of them is not a good option, taking on c5 most likely, so the pawn's going to just sit. Now let's look at the pawn on c5. It has 3 options. It can sit still, it can capture, or it can push. So there's an extra option for this pawn on c5, therefore it tends to have the advantage in terms of this pawn tension. So I don't think you should take this pawn on d4 immediately, John, unless there's a good reason to play it. And after c takes d4, white captured with the c pawn, but I think a stronger move for white would have been capture back with the e pawn. Because now if you look at the imbalances, white has both bishops that are free to move, right? They're both on open diagonals. Black has 1 good bishop, but 1 bad bishop because the bishop on c8 is blocked in behind this pawn chain. So that's an advantage for white in terms of the bishops. So white missed this. There was a chance for white to claim an edge here with e takes d4. So John, I think holding off on that capture, c takes d4, developing a bit more first would be the way to go. Maybe knight c6, get bishop e7, get castled kingside. That'd be an improvement over taking right away. So we see c takes d4 by white, knight c6. And now watch what John does in the next 6 moves. Just develops all of his pieces, and he has this solid plan to play on the queen side. This is typical of this structure. This is sort of like a Slav exchange structure. You want to advance on the queen side. That's what John's doing here. Rook c1, bishop to b7. So every minor piece is developed. It got the king castled, and the rooks are ready to come into the game next. Rook e1. Now you might be wondering, why would white play rook e1? It's most likely that white wants to push pawn to e4. So I think John noticed this, and he just gets ready for it. He plays rook c8, saying, okay, if you want to play e4, be my guest. I don't mind if you want to break in the center, because I know strategically it's a bad decision. So let's see what happens. White plays pawn to e4, and here the strongest move is knight to b4, but I think it's a bit nitpicking. I'm perfectly fine with how John plays this. D takes e4, and after knight takes e4, there's this isolated queen pawn sitting on d4, and look at what John does. Knight to b4, and after the trade, he plants his knight right in front of this isolated pawn. The d5 square is a great outpost for the knight, and that's a significant imbalance, the pawn on d4. It's an isolated pawn, and it's blocking the bishop on b2. So that bishop just runs into the pawn. It's stuck being passive. John's f6 bishop attacks the pawn, and his b7 bishop cuts all the way across the board on these open light squares, and the knight's a very powerful piece in the center on this outpost where it controls a lot of squares. So already I'm liking black's position a lot. Stockfish is saying 3/4 of a pawn, maybe 2/3 of a pawn up for black. And this is getting difficult to play for white. So white goes for the immediate checkmate with queen to d3. And after g6, white plays h4. Very aggressive, trying hard to create this checkmate threat against the black king. But John capitalizes now with tactics and plays bishop takes h4, gaining a pawn. After knight takes, queen takes h4. Even though there's no dark square bishop and the black king is a little bit weak, I think the trades benefited black because look at this bishop on b7, pointing at g2. The knight's ready to play knight to f4 immediately, forking the pawn and the queen. And the black queen is over here as well, trying to attack the white king. So we have 3 black pieces all ready to attack, and black is up a pawn. I think it's on white to show where's that compensation for the pawn. Can white somehow make use of this bishop pair? If you can get the bishops active as white, maybe you can claim some compensation for the pawn. And I think a way to do that might be to offer the queen trade here. It sounds a little funny, down a pawn, why would you offer the queen trade? But this queen is very dangerous hanging around the white king. So I think white should go for the queen trade and then try to activate this dark square bishop, maybe sneaking around into black's position somehow, create some problems that way. Combination of the bishop and the rooks. White plays pawn to g3. And I think this is a small mistake because it's actually softening up the kingside structure and it helps strengthen this bishop. So look at the bishop. It's eyeing this h1 square and the queen's also eyeing h1. So this is a big tactical issue for white, and you can just tell tactics are about to happen. So here John plays queen to h3, and now look at the threat. If this knight moves, queen to g2 or queen to h1 are both checkmate. That bishop on b7 is just a monster. It's coming to life. No pawns at all in the diagonal. The only piece blocking the diagonal is a black piece, which can be moved out of the way. White plays rook to e3 here. I think they were a bit flustered, not sure how to get out of this attack. And we see knight takes e3 by John. It's a forced checkmate in 4 moves or less. After queen takes e3, John executes the checkmate immediately. Really like this game. 4 main takeaways, I think. Number 1, it's a positive takeaway. Good job grabbing that space in the center early with the black pieces. White played passive. You gain the space. Number 2, an improvement takeaway. Keep aware of that pawn tension that we talked about. The c5 and the d4 pawn attacking each other. That's something to keep in mind. Number 3 was solid play against the isolated queen pawn. That pawn on d4 was a big weakness for white. That b2 bishop never got into the game. I really like how you played that, John. And number 4, you had strong tactics when you're able to win the h4 pawn, create the checkmate threats, and an efficient kingside attack. So I think that was really good as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, let your friends know about chess goals, and we'll see you in the next video.